Hi, Gordon here with another edition of the Unscripted Series, and today I'm going to talk about imperfection. I'm in the middle of recording the birth of my MOA series, and one of the people watching it remarked the other day, he said, "Hey, do you know what Gordon's favorite word is?" Hint, he uses it a lot on this video, and I guess it's the word perfect. It's interesting because there's a whole lot of thoughts swirling around in my head, and I hope I can get them all out. But it's an interesting subject to me because, I've said before that, of course, we aim for perfection in the instruments, but we never achieve it and never will. We constantly are raising the bar. That is, expecting more and more of ourselves and looking at the instrument through better and better and more discerning eyes. But I've never seen maybe a perfect handmade anything, but certainly a perfect instrument from anybody. There's always imperfections. The question is, what are you looking for? How carefully are you looking? Do you have magnifying glasses on? How carefully are you measuring? How accurate is your measuring equipment? In a sense, if we're black and white about it, nothing in the world is perfect. It's a question of to what accuracy are we measuring. But in addition to that, we're dealing with an organic substance and one which has its own qualities or imperfections. And then, of course, we as humans, make mistakes. And I want to talk about how we deal with those and how we look at them. I'll tell you that I'm not complaining, but we are in I think, a tough spot. It is my greatest burden, I will say emotionally, which is that we're building custom instruments that people wait a year to get. And in that process, they have chosen the wood and bonded with that instrument before it has even become an instrument. And I've talked with the owner of a company that imports instruments that are made in China, and he told me that they throw away about 30% of the instruments that they receive before they even go out the door. I was aghast. That's a staggeringly high number, but it's how they deal with imperfection that is greater than, what they deem appropriate. Then there are makers that sell through dealers. They're not doing custom instruments, and, they can have, a factory, they can sell them as a factory model or one that has a known problem. Again, it's not a custom instrument, so they're perfect ones, the ones that meet their standard, go into their dealers, and then they've got factory seconds. Well, we don't have either of those options. When we build an instrument, we're going to build it, and I can count on one hand out of nearly 1,500 instruments, less than 5 that have not made it to completion, where we have early on determined stop, and throw it away. But the reason for that is that our playability and our acoustics are very consistent. So we're talking about aesthetics, and I just can't bring myself to throw away an instrument which has, to my ear, our ear, great playability and great acoustics. And so it's going to get completed and find a happy home. So, what we do is, as we're building the instrument, we're watching what's going on, and sometimes there is something that just is not hidden. As an aside, I talked with a guy the other day, and he related a story to me. He said that he had heard the difference between a luthier and a master luthier is a master luthier is better at hiding their mistakes. And I think there's something to that. I think that the ability to take and, blend in a flaw is it's a pretty good ability. And I remember, looking at a guy's guitar that he had made, and he'd taken a beautiful spruce top and put a dark finish on the whole thing. And I asked him why, and it's because there were flaws in it. And that's how he dealt with it. Just cover them up. Well, it's not our style, and it's not what we do. So, and from time to time, there are issues with our instruments. And I will say, I've said it in this video earlier that it's a question of what is your standard. And so we have a standard, and it isn't written down. It's just that we know what that standard is. It changes over time. Our standard is much higher than it used to be. But if things are better than that standard, then that instrument is fine. And nearly every instrument that goes out is that way. But if things are below that standard, then something needs to be done about it. And in some cases, Shar or Nicole doing QA work will identify that issue, and we can go back and work on it. Other times, there is nothing that can be done. Sometimes it is a natural part of the instrument. There was, I'll describe a couple of those in a minute. Other times we cause them, and I will tell you that when they happen, what we do is notify the to-be owner, and we tell them, there's this issue with your instrument, and we generally will offer a discount, a modest discount, because it's generally a very minor aesthetic flaw. And the way we determine that is, I think, well, if I took this to a festival and sold it as a factory second, how much would we discount it? We also offer to that to-be owner to build them a brand new instrument. Because I think that some people want that. They're paying a lot of money. They've waited a long time. They want that just absolute, what they think of as perfect instrument. And so we offer to build them a new instrument. So generally it's one of those two things. Sometimes it's a flaw that it is, just such that I'll say, you either take it the way it is or we'll build you a new one. Generally, when we didn't cause it, and when it's something, organic that I think of could even be a feature. There are times when we don't mention things at all because they're just so normal to us, and they are organic. I'll tell you a couple of those. The curly mango that we use has a lot of wormholes in it. I love it. It gives it so much character. We generally don't mention to people, hey, there's wormholes in this, because we think of it as just part of the natural, organic nature of that wood. Another example is pores. The very natural pores, holes, not through holes, but surface, that are found in nearly every wood. Maple doesn't have them, some don't, but nearly every wood has them. Some are very dramatic. Coca-Cola has very dramatic pores, and I remember shipping an instrument off to an owner, and I got a call, and he said, well, I love the instrument, but I'm worried, what are it looks like there may be cracks on the back, and I explained, they're pores, it's why I didn't even mention them. So there are things like that, and then there are things that deserve mention. I'll tell you that with, we built an instrument for one guy, and the spruce top had some little curved, I don't know if you call them, we'll call them voids, which is when we're sanding the surface, suddenly just an open area inside the wood, an air pocket reveals itself. And there are a couple of these, and they're very natural and tiny. And in fact, the only reason I mentioned them to him was that I thought if he saw them at all, they might be mistaken for a fingernail mark that we had made. And I wanted him to know that it's not that. But, now that I'd mentioned it, I thought I'd better offer to build him a replacement instrument. Well, he got the instrument, looked at it, and said, yes, I would like the replacement. So we happily did that, and that original instrument found a really happy home somewhere else. It was a wonderful instrument. We had another one that was, again, a natural mark on a cedar top, and because of the nature of this internal feature, it came out as very dark and really stood out. And so I wrote the to-be owner and said, we'll offer you a discount, which I did in that case because it was a dramatic mark, and I certainly didn't feel I could sell it for full value at a festival. And I said, or we'll build you another one in. And she said what many people say. She first of all said, thank you so much for letting me know. And I do find I get that response universally. People appreciate that report. And she said, you know, that tree lived to become an instrument. That top is destined, you know. Because I think I had offered we could also retop it, take off the top and redo it. She said, it's destined to become an instrument, and I want it. And, you know, so there it is, reaching its, you know, happy home. And as I said, sometimes there are things that we cause, and you've seen the birth videos, and I'll tell you, you can be routing for binding, and you can get a chip. And, you know, maybe that chip it can always be filled, but maybe it can be filled in a way that can't be seen. But a lot of times it can be seen. You know, there's one that we did for a guy on a cedar top, and you're going to see that. The fill is going to be a little dark. It was a tiny place. He asked us to build him a new instrument. We did. Dave Matthews now owns that instrument with that little piece, and he liked that. He thought that was a really cool feature. So anyway, you know, there's probably been a long unscripted video. I'm going to look at the time. Oh my gosh, 11 and a half minutes. So, you know, but it's a complicated subject. And recently, you know, we finished an instrument for a guy, and there's an imperfection. And he said, you know, maybe you could talk a little bit about that. So I thought, you know, he's right. We ought to talk about how they occur, why, and what we do about it. So, you know, to those of you that are in the build schedule, just know that things happen, and not always and not often, but they do, and when they do, we'll let you know about them. And you know, I'll tell you that in the end, I'm proud of every instrument that we finish. So I guess maybe that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.